A House panel has approved a GOP Dodd-Frank rewrite. Essentially, they want to do away with certain regulations that were passed under the Obama administration to kind of rein in the activity of big banks. They believe that maybe it makes some sense to do away with these regulations so these big banks can continue on with the activity that they did before 2008, which sounds like a disaster. Now, they plan to revoke the expansive financial regulations passed under Obama after the 2008 meltdown. It would remove critical regulations placed on the financial sector through Dodd-Frank. Republicans have long argued that the 2010 bill has suffocated economic growth, crushed banks, and limited choices under overbearing, costly rules. Right? Oh, these poor banks, they're really suffering. What's amazing is they made this argument that, I mean, year after year, we're only experiencing 2% growth. 2% growth is terrible. No, you know what's terrible? When the financial market collapses, right? Or when people lose their homes, when people are foreclosed because they were given predatory loans. Those are the types of things that are terrible, and we should be looking out for the consumer and protecting them.
But you know what? 2% growth isn't good enough. Right. The pathway to 3 and 4% growth, though, is not what the Republicans are offering. The prescription is really simple. The reason we're growing 2% is because our economy is based on consumption. And the people who need to spend money don't have any money. And the people who have money don't need to buy anything. And so really simply put, we can get to 3 and 4% growth if we help people who are working full-time and more than full-time but not making ends meet have higher wages, through policies like a higher minimum wage, more earned income tax credit, and a whole host of progressive policies that actually can deliver us to 3 and 4% growth. And so, you know, the whole right-wing narrative around this is, you know, a tuck and detract from the real issue, which is their plan doesn't take us to the growth that the country needs.
So, John, I'm wondering what you thought of Dodd-Frank, because you know, the Republicans bellyache and say, oh my God, it was so onerous. And Obama, on the other hand, kind of reinforced that by saying it was the most historic financial reform in the planet's history. And you know, the Babylonians are still shaking about what we did to the banks and stuff. My sense of it was that it was actually not that tough. But you know, you're in the financial industry, so you have a better sense of it. What did you think of it?
Yeah, not that tough. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being what we need, I'd put it at a 4. Now, we were moving away from a 1, so it was absolutely an important improvement. And rolling back a 4 to a 1 isn't the answer, obviously, but we need better and more regulation of the financial industry, not less. And in particular, we need regulation that actually is focused on protecting the consumer.
Right.
The irony is the big banks actually like a certain kind of regulation. The regulation they like is the kind of regulation that protects them from competition. And so if you peel back the onion, you'll find actually that the financial lobby is for certain kinds of regulation, the kinds of regulation that restricts competitive activities in the financial industry. What they oppose is the kind of regulation that protects the consumer. And we need a whole hell of a lot more protection for the consumer.
Yeah, and that's why right now the Trump guys are targeting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're against the Protection Bureau, they're against any kind of regulation that actually protects consumers, as Dodd-Frank does to some degree, as we just discussed. But in reality, look, these companies, again, they do what's logical, which is I pay off politicians, I kill off my competition. That's a lot better way to get profits than to actually compete with them, right? And so that's what, by the way, conservatives describe as crony capitalism. So if you're a conservative and you're mad at that, you're absolutely right. You should be mad at that. And unfortunately, that's what these giant banks, who are giant donors to politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, that's exactly what they do. That's why they got away with what they did under Bush, under Obama, and now under Trump. There are no brakes left in that car. So they're getting all their dreams. They're like, oh, that weak Dodd-Frank, just get rid of that completely. Consumer protection, get rid of consumer protection. And you know, all in the effort that unfortunately so much of multinational corporations do now, which is privatize the gains, socialize the losses.
Right.
So when I'm making money, I take, and if I go bust, I'm gonna make you pay. And how did I do that? I gave legal bribes to the politicians.
And the irony is, you know, as you really gracefully put, privatizing the gains and socializing the losses is not capitalism.
That's right. That's right.
At all. And the irony is you hear the advocacy of these methods from the people that wrap themselves in the banner of capitalism, but what they're pushing is nothing actually like free market capitalism. It's this cronyism.
Yeah, so so you run a progressive financial institution, but actually, if you're a progressive or a conservative, it doesn't really matter. Who wants to get robbed, right? So why would and that's why when we talk about money influencing politics, that's 93% of Americans agree. They're like, yeah, of course, they listen more to their donors than the average voter. That's like the most obvious thing in the world. Yet in Washington, they all pretend like, no, are you challenging their honor and reputation? Yeah, I am. So are 93% of Americans. And if you got rid of the crony capitalism, then they'd have to compete with you, Joe. And they'd have to actually offer better services and actually serve their customers. And they haven't done that in a long, long time.
But let's be real. I mean, the Democratic Party is as guilty as the Republican Party of this. And frankly, I think has more responsibility to bear, because you expect of the right-wing party in a country that they're going to be in the bed with the banks, right?
Right.
So who's really at fault then for this present state of affairs? The party that you'd expect would be doing that, or the party on the left that should be the advocate of Main Street, that has been the advocate of Wall Street? I mean, it's a race to the bottom between the Democrat and Republican parties to see who's better for Wall Street.
Yeah, you make a really good point about that, because on one hand, you have Republicans who just do what they say they're gonna do. They don't really hide the fact that they're in favor of the big banks. Whereas Democrats use certain messaging during their campaign to appeal to progressives like us, and then they turn around and just reveal that they are in bed with the big banks, that they are in bed with Wall Street.
Yeah. No, we've been snookered by these corporate Democrats. And if we are as passionate as I know we are about changing the future, no more. We cannot be snookered by these corporate Wall Street Democrats anymore. And if we continue to be as progressives snookered by them, then you know what? Shame on us.
Yeah, now this person told me off the record, so I can't reveal who the names are, right? But Democratic senators behind the scenes have told other Democratic senators, hey, we get money from these same banks, so take it easy.
Yep.
And that's why you don't set up a system where you can legally bribe politicians and call it campaign contributions. That's crazy. That's absolutely nuts.
If I may, I'd like to be even more specific, which is to your point about incentives. We should really ponder whether any politician that represents states where a disproportion of that state's industry comes from the financial industry can possibly be anti-Wall Street, right? If you look at the power base of the Democratic Party, it's been in the Northeast, where Wall Street is located. And so actually kind of odd that we'd expect anything other than what we've got. If we keep nominating politicians that come from states where this industry is centered, what should you expect?
Joe, I hear you on that, but I mind that a tiny bit, no, a lot less actually. Because if you're from the very specific, you're a congressional representative from the very specific district that represents Wall Street.
Yeah.
I get it, those are your constituents.
Yeah.
They're your actual voters, right? It's another thing if you're a senator from New York and the Wall Street is a tiny, tiny amount of your voters, but you make excuses like, well, after 9/11, I represented, Wall Street as their senator. I don't know, maybe somebody with a name that rhymes with Millery Blinton might have said that earlier. But I think the bigger problem is that those Wall Street guys can go and give money to any politician. So they could buy the guy from Idaho just as easily as they could buy the person that represents their district in New York. And so they bought the whole country and then basically tried to kill off their competition.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but you're here to defy them, so.